Smart contact lenses for IOP monitoring, August 2026. Clinical utility results. Evidence cutoff, August 23, 2026. Introduction. Continuous intraocular pressure monitoring could reveal pressure changes that are easily missed during a routine eye examination, especially pressure increases during sleep while lying down or outside normal office hours. Standard clinic testing usually provides only a few measurements each year, most often while the patient is awake and seated. The technology has advanced substantially. However, the clinical evidence available by August 23, 2026, still supports smart contact lenses mainly as research and specialized monitoring tools, not as replacements for routine glaucoma examinations or as standalone devices for making treatment decisions. The most important distinction is between analytical validity, whether the device detects pressure-related changes. Clinical validity, whether those patterns are associated with glaucoma progression or treatment response. Clinical utility, whether using the device improves treatment decisions and patient outcomes. By August 2026, analytical validity is promising for several devices. Clinical validity is emerging. Clinical utility, particularly fewer visual field losses, fewer urgent visits, or better long-term glaucoma control, has not yet been proven. Executive summary. The newest peer-reviewed clinical report, published June 23, 2026, described a soft contact lens with a sleep mask reader that detected posture-related and closed-eye pressure changes. Human testing was very small and did not establish overnight adherence, data completeness, or treatment benefit. PubMed, a newer human accuracy study involving 80 eyes, found that a contact lens sensor had generally favorable agreement with Goldman applanation tonometry and supine Perkins tonometry. More than 80% of comparisons were within 5 millimeters of mercury, but the study was short-term and did not evaluate treatment outcomes. Full text. The United States Food and Drug Administration authorized Sensimed triggerfish detects relative ocular dimensional changes, not a directly interchangeable Goldman pressure value. Its intended clinical role is to identify potentially important pressure-related time periods for follow-up testing. United States Food and Drug Administration review. In an early observational triggerfish study, 13 of 15 patients, or 87%, completed 24-hour monitoring, and treatment was changed in 11 of 15 patients, or 73%, after the tracing was reviewed. These were clinician decisions after reviewing a completed recording, not responses to validated real-time alerts. PubMed study report. No publicly available August 2026 study demonstrated that an automated contact lens alert improved visual field preservation, reduced glaucoma progression, or reliably changed management through a predefined alert protocol. Home rebound tonometry remains more clinically established than experimental smart lenses because it provides a conventional pressure number. It is intermittent, requires training, and still cannot replace clinic-based assessment. European Glaucoma Society Guideline, what the August 2026 evidence actually shows. For the full table, please open this article on visualfieldtest.com. The Japanese study registry is important because it represents a relatively larger contemporary clinical dataset. However, the publicly available record reports enrollment and safety information rather than detailed pressure curves, Goldman agreement, management changes, or visual outcomes. Japanese registry record. Correlation with Goldman applanation tonometry. Triggerfish. Useful for timing, not direct pressure substitution. The triggerfish system uses a soft contact lens containing a strain-sensitive circuit near the edge of the lens. The circuit detects changes in the shape or circumference of the eye that are believed to accompany pressure changes. Its output is usually reported in electrical units or relative signal changes. It does not provide a conventional pressure value that can automatically be substituted for a Goldman reading. The United States Food and Drug Administration review cited a strong correlation between the average 24-hour triggerfish curve and a fellow eye pressure curve in 30 healthy participants. However, this supports recognition of a 24-hour pattern, not point-by-point interchangeability with Goldman applanation tonometry. The agency described the device as a way to identify the time window when a clinician should perform conventional pressure measurement. United States Food and Drug Administration review. This limitation is clinically important. A large signal peak does not automatically mean that the pressure is 30 or 40 millimeters of mercury. The signal may also be influenced by lens fit, corneal curvature, corneal thickness and biomechanics, blinking and eye movement temperature, eyelid pressure, posture, differences between individual disposable lenses. Earlier research also found that triggerfish output did not consistently correlate with Goldmann pressure before and after pressure-lowering treatment. This is why the device is best interpreted as a patient-specific pattern monitor, not as a standalone tonometer. Review of triggerfish evidence. Newer sensors are moving toward absolute pressure beal. The 2022 Purdue Smart Soft Contact Lens was designed to provide calibrated absolute pressure values. In 3 human participants, the sensor showed a reported linear calibration with an R-Freud value of 0.91 when compared with iCare home measurements. During a 6-hour ambulatory test, its pressure trend was closer to Goldmann measurements than the iCare comparison in that small experiment. Full study? A separate human study involving 80 eyes found that the newer contact lens sensor had generally good agreement with Goldmann and Perkins measurements. All pressure differences were reported as being within 2 millimeters of mercury in the analyzed comparisons. More than 80% of Bland-Altman comparisons were within 5 millimeters of mercury, and more than 60% were within 3 millimeters of mercury. However, this was a short, cross-sectional study and did not demonstrate reliable home use, natural sleep monitoring, or improved outcomes. Full study. The June 2026 Nocturnal Sensor paper reported that sensor-derived trends closely matched both Goldmann and iCare measurements during tested conditions. Its human testing was still a pilot rather than a large validation trial. PubMed Publisher Report. Diurnal and Nocturnal Pressure Patterns. Why Sleep Monitoring Matters. Intraocular pressure often changes with posture and time of day. When a person lies down, changes in episcleral venous pressure, fluid distribution, and aqueous humor outflow may increase pressure. These changes can be especially important for people whose daytime clinic pressure appears controlled, but whose glaucoma continues to worsen. In the early 15-patient triggerfish study, 9 of 13 patients with complete recordings, or 69%, had their highest signal during the nighttime period. Prolonged pressure-related peaks were reported in 12 of 15 patients, or 80%. The pattern was often most informative outside normal clinic hours. PubMed Study Report. A separate study involving 40 treated glaucoma patients found that participants who were progressing despite controlled daytime pressure were more likely to have a nighttime pressure-related peak than stable participants. The study included 19 progressors and 21 non-progressors, and the association was statistically significant. This is clinically interesting, but it shows an association, not proof that eliminating the nighttime peak prevents vision loss. Full study. What the newest 2026 sensor adds. The June 2026 soft lens study focused on a major weakness of older sensors: difficulty measuring accurately with the eye closed and the patient lying down. The new lens was tested with a reader integrated into a sleep mask, closed eye conditions, recumbent and posture transition testing, healthy participants, a participant with pigmentary glaucoma. The glaucoma participant showed a sustained pressure elevation during the supine closed eye period that mimicked sleep. The lens also remained comfortable in the small human pilot, with reported comfort ratings generally above 90 on the study's 0 to 100 comfort scale. Publisher Report. The limitation is that the study did not yet evaluate fully unconstrained natural sleep in a large patient population. It also did not report how often the sensor failed to collect usable data, how many patients would tolerate repeated overnight use, or whether the findings changed treatment. Adherence, comfort, and data completeness. Triggerfish experience. The strongest published adherence data remain from older triggerfish studies rather than the newest experimental lenses. In the 15-patient initial clinical report, 87% completed the full 24-hour recording. 1 patient stopped because of device intolerance. 1 recording was incomplete because of technical malfunction. Average comfort was reported as 7 out of 10. No serious adverse events were reported. PubMed. In a larger 40-patient reproducibility study, common temporary effects included blurred vision in approximately 82.5%, conjunctival redness in approximately 80%, superficial punctate keratitis in approximately 15%. The mean discomfort scores were 27.2 during the first session and 23.8 during the second session, on a scale in which higher scores indicated greater discomfort. Full study. These results show that 24-hour monitoring is technically feasible, but they also show why comfort and ocular surface health matter. A device that generates excellent data but cannot be worn safely or comfortably may have limited practical value. Newer soft lenses. The 2022 Purdue Smart Soft Lens was compared with a Bearsoft contact lens and triggerfish in only 3 human participants. After approximately 20 minutes of adaptation, the Smart Lens received a discomfort score of 12.7 PLIVES 5.4, compared with 4.0 PLIVES 4.2 for the Bear lens. Triggerfish insertion and removal were rated as substantially more uncomfortable in that small comparison. Full study. Another 2022 contact lens sensor study reported that all participants completed their assigned 3-hour or 24-hour protocol. However, completion of the scheduled protocol is not the same as proving that every 5-minute interval contained usable data. The study also found temporary increases in ocular surface staining and dry eye symptoms after wear. PubMed. For the June 2026 nocturnal sensor, the researchers reported favorable comfort in the small human sample, but no formal adherence percentage or data completeness percentage was reported. The authors specifically described the system as a prototype that still requires testing during unrestricted natural sleep. Publisher report: did device alerts change management? No validated alert-driven pathway yet. As of August 23, 2026, there is no mature clinical evidence showing that an automated smart contact lens alert reliably triggers an appropriate medication, laser, or surgical intervention. The most frequently cited management result comes from the 2011 observational triggerfish study, in which treatment was changed in 11 of 15 patients, or 73%, after the physician reviewed the 24-hour recording. The changes included adjustments such as changing the timing of eye drops, adding pressure-lowering medication, considering laser treatment, considering surgery. These decisions were made after review of a graph. They were not generated by a validated threshold alert, and the study did not show that the changes improved long-term visual outcomes. Study report. Home tonometry has more direct management evidence. Home rebound tonometry has also been associated with treatment changes. In one clinical practice study involving 102 eyes, pressure peaks occurred outside normal office hours in 25 eyes, or 24.5%. Treatment was changed in 36 eyes, including 35 medication changes and 1 selective laser procedure. However, the authors emphasized that these changes were not necessarily caused by the out-of-office readings alone. Full study. In another prospective study, patients measured pressure 4 times daily for 1 week before and after treatment. Among eyes with a Goldman-confirmed treatment response, iCare Home detected a response in 90.9% in at least one time period and 45.5% in all 4 time periods. The study also showed that isolated home readings could produce apparent responses even when Goldman testing did not, emphasizing the need to interpret trends rather than single values. PubMed. Comparison with standard monitoring and home tonometry. Standard clinic monitoring, routine glaucoma care still depends on a combination of Goldman applanation tonometry, visual field testing, optic nerve examination, optical coherence tomography when appropriate, central corneal thickness measurement, gonioscopy when clinically indicated. The American Academy of Ophthalmology's 2026 Primary Open-Angle Glaucoma Guidance and the National Institute for Health and Care Excellence continue to place clinic-based examination and Goldman-type applanation tonometry at the center of care. American Academy of Ophthalmology Guidance, National Institute for Health and Care Excellence recommendations. Strengths: validated clinical framework, direct examination, structural and functional testing, and established treatment thresholds. Limitations: measurements are intermittent, usually taken while awake and seated, and may miss nighttime or activity-related peaks. Home rebound tonometry. Home rebound devices such as iCare Home provide intermittent pressure measurements in the patient's usual environment. A review of home tonometry studies found that 56 of 76 trained participants, or 74%, were able to perform self-tonometry correctly. The mean difference from Goldman testing was approximately 0.3 millimeters of mercury, and 84% of measurements were within 3 millimeters of mercury in one-sided study. Accuracy can be affected by corneal thickness, positioning, technique, and higher or lower pressure ranges. Review. Strengths provides a conventional pressure number, easier to interpret than a relative electrical signal. Already used in clinical workflows, can be repeated over several days, may detect pressure peaks missed in the clinic. Limitations. Requires training. Measurements are intermittent. It is difficult to measure during undisturbed sleep. Incorrect alignment can produce misleading readings. It cannot replace examination of the optic nerve and visual field. The European Glaucoma Society states that self-tonometry may be useful in selected situations, but cannot replace clinic-based intraocular pressure measurement. Guideline. Smart contact lenses. Strengths. Potentially continuous monitoring. Can capture sleep and posture-related patterns. Requires little patient interaction after fitting. May identify a personalized time window for pressure assessment. Limitations. Many systems measure relative changes rather than absolute pressure. Lens fit and corneal biomechanics can affect results. Overnight comfort and ocular surface safety remain important. Human sample sizes remain small. No validated alert thresholds have been tied to improved outcomes. Newer systems remain experimental and may not be commercially or clinically available. Data interpretation in clinical practice. A sensible interpretation model would include the following steps. Establish a clinic baseline with Goldman applanation tonometry and a complete glaucoma examination. Calibrate or compare the device with a reference tonometer when the lens is first used. Look for repeated patterns, not one isolated peak. Separate physiological changes from artifacts caused by blinking, movement, eyelid pressure, temperature, lens displacement, or posture. Confirm a clinically important signal with Goldman testing or a validated home tonometer before making a major treatment change. Compare the pressure pattern with visual field and optic nerve findings. A nighttime signal peak may be important, but it does not automatically prove that the patient needs additional medication. Treatment decisions should also consider target pressure, disease severity, optic nerve appearance, visual field progression, medication tolerance, blood pressure, sleep apnea, and the possibility that the signal reflects lens or ocular surface behavior rather than pressure alone. Telehealth integration. Smart lenses could eventually support a telehealth workflow in which a clinic fits the device and confirms safety. The patient wears the lens at home. The reader transfers data to a secure platform. Software identifies repeated pressure-related patterns. A clinician reviews the tracing rather than relying on an automatic alert alone. Any proposed treatment change is discussed with the patient and confirmed through appropriate clinical testing. The Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services broadly describes remote patient monitoring as the collection and electronic transmission of physiologic data from a qualifying medical device combined with clinician review and treatment management. That framework could eventually support remote pressure monitoring, but it does not automatically establish coverage for an experimental lens or its disposable components. Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. Important telehealth requirements would include reliable automatic data transmission, clear responsibility for reviewing alerts, defined response times, a method for confirming false alarms, documentation of treatment decisions, protection of eye health data, a plan for urgent pressure elevations, integration with the electronic medical record. Payer perspectives in 2026. Commercial payer policy remains cautious. An April 2026 Anthem medical policy classifies continuous intraocular pressure monitoring, including triggerfish and implantable pressure sensors, as investigational and not medically necessary for all indications. The policy cites small studies, limited follow-up, lack of proven superiority over standard testing, and insufficient evidence that monitoring improves health outcomes. Anthem medical policy. A related policy for intermittent remote devices, such as home rebound tonometers, also classifies them as investigational and not medically necessary under that payer's policy. AmeriGroup policy. For broader coverage, payers will likely want evidence showing Better visual field or optic nerve outcomes, fewer emergency visits, fewer unnecessary medication changes, reliable long-term adherence, standardized definitions of a clinically meaningful alert, cost savings compared with repeated clinic testing, safe use in people with dry eye, corneal disease, or poor contact lens tolerance, interoperability with clinical records and remote monitoring systems. Medicare coverage for glaucoma screening should not be confused with coverage for continuous home pressure monitoring. Medicare glaucoma screening coverage. Conclusion. The August 2026 evidence shows real progress in continuous intraocular pressure sensing. The newest soft contact lenses are becoming more comfortable, more conformal to the eye, more capable of measuring with the eyelid closed, better suited to recumbent and nighttime monitoring, closer to providing calibrated absolute pressure values. However, the evidence remains early. The strongest results involve small pilot studies, short monitoring periods, experimental devices, or relative pressure-related signals. The most convincing management change result, treatment changes in 73% of patients after triggerfish review, came from a small observational study conducted many years ago, not from a modern randomized alert-based clinical pathway. For patients today, the practical hierarchy remains: routine glaucoma examination with Goldmann applanation tonometry, visual field testing, and optic nerve assessment, home rebound tonometry for selected patients who can use it accurately, continuous contact lens monitoring for specialized clinical investigation or carefully selected cases, automated device alerts only as prompts for clinician review, not as automatic treatment instructions. Smart contact lenses may eventually fill the gap between occasional clinic measurements and the eye's constantly changing pressure environment. But as of August 23, 2026, they remain promising monitoring technologies rather than proven outcome-improving replacements for standard glaucoma care. All links to sources are available in the text version of this article. You can find the full article at visualfieldtest.com. Thanks for listening. To check your visual field, click the link at the bottom of this article or visit visualfieldtest.com.